for our final sort of shape animation tricks this week is going to be to morph between different shapes. Okay. Kind of cool, not actually as complicated as it maybe seems like it would be, but it is a little weird how we're going to do this. So what I have here is I have a square that morphs into a circle, which morphs into a triangle, and then morphs into a star, and then back to a square. And I only did that because it loops nicely when you play it that way, because it turns back into its original square shape. And we're going to do this using mainly one layer. We'll have to have a layer for each of the shapes, but the reality is it's all going to end up happening on one layer. If you look here, I have none of the top 3 layers even on. This is technically all happening on my original square layer. All right. And how many keyframes do we have? Well, if I go to the bottom layer and hit the letter U, it will show all available keyframes. And you will notice that we have actually 2 different variables that have keyframes on them, and they're in sync with one another. One is path, which is doing the most of the warping and the morphing, and then the position is something I'm doing just to correct a problem, which you will probably see when we build this. I'm having to recenter the objects. It's a little weird, but it's kind of a flaw, and I haven't figured out how to solve it yet. And we're going to do a new composition, and I would call this shape morph. And I have several, so I'm going to put a 3 after mine. Again, we're still doing standard settings, 1920, 1080, 10 seconds and everything. All that's fine. We're all good. I'm going to tell you, let's go ahead and mark off our workspace to end at about 5 seconds. There's no point in it being any longer than that. But we are going to create our main shapes. Now, I'm going to do 3 now. And then to repeat, I'm going to add the star later. So you don't need to add the star. We're not going to do the star officially, but it's a good chance once I've gone through it once to go, all right, what if I wanted to add one more? And then you can see me do it again. It works out pretty well. So I am going to go to the shape rectangle tool. In this case, you can hit the letter Q, or you can go up here to the top left-hand corner where there is a square tool. It's actually a rectangle, and I'm going to select that rectangle tool. Now, before I get too far, I'm on a black background, and if I go to draw my square right now, it is the fill color and the stroke colors are set up here. So not on the side where we've been setting things for text, because this is a shape, it's up here. Now, this black center fill and white stroke at about 7 pixels wide is actually a pretty good setting. If you want to go ahead and set yours to be the same, go ahead and click on the fill color, set it down to black. Go ahead and go to the stroke color or stroke color and set it to white. That works pretty well. And then I would do a stroke of at least about 7 pixels so we can see what we're doing. All right, so I'm going to click and draw my square. And although this doesn't always reliably work for me, when you hold down Shift and then click and draw, it should limit the shape to not to be balanced on all sides. So in a sense, a perfect square. If you don't do that, it will let you draw a rectangle of whatever shape. But I want it to do a standard shape, so I'm holding down Shift, and I am dragging it, and I am making a square. And you can make it approximately this big, just something that is not totally filling the frame, but enough that we can sort of see what it is. All right. Now, we've talked about being able to make our alignment, our anchor point move to center. On a Mac, it's Option Command together, and then double click on the pan behind or anchor point tool, and it auto centers, boom, your anchor point to the middle. On a PC, that should be probably Control and Alt that you're holding down together, and then double click on the little box with the arrows pointing at all the internal walls of the box. Is kind of what this looks like. It's kind of hard to see, I can tell, but we've played with it before. All right, and then I'm just going to eyeball this thing. Actually, I can go to a line and I can center it top to bottom and left to right over here. All right, so now I have a square, yay me. I am actually going to go ahead and name that. So I'm going to click on the layer, hit return, and I'm going to call it square so I don't get confused. All right, and then I'm going to collapse it closed so everything's a little easier on the eyes. And I'm going to go up to the shape tool again, only this time I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to change it to be the ellipse tool, which is basically roundy things like circles. All right. I still like the same black fill, white stroke sort of look. I'm going to hold down shift so I get a perfect circle. If I don't, I'll get a weird, egg-shaped thing that I don't want. And I'm going to draw it approximately the same size as the one I had before of my square. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get it approximate. And then of course, I'm going to do the exact same thing again. I'm going to hold down the Alt and Control on a PC, Option and Command on a Mac, and I'm going to double click on the anchor tool to move my anchor to the middle. And then I'm going to align it by going over to the right hand side to the align panel and center left to right, center top to bottom. And look at that. That was almost exactly the same size as the square. Not bad for just eyeballing, I must say. All right, but let's name this layer so we don't get confused later. I'm going to click on it, hit return or enter so that it'll let me type. And I'm going to call it my circle. As soon as I learn how to spell circle. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, only I'm going to do a triangle this time. How do you get a triangle? Well, you actually, as you would guess, we're going to go back to the shape tool. However, you'll notice there is not a triangle option. There is only a polygon option. Well, that'll have to do. We're going to start with that, and then we will make it into a triangle. So I'm going to go to the polygon tool, select it. I'm going to hold down shift. Let's try drawing off to the side. And sure enough, because I wasn't anywhere near those other things, it assumed I wanted a whole new layer and it did what I wanted. That's pretty good. I'm going to repeat the process, Command Option on my Mac, Control Alt on a PC to auto center my anchor point, which it doesn't look like it did a very good job of that, or at least I can't see it. I guess it did it. It did fine. All right, but I'm already annoyed, right? It's not a triangle. So I'm going to click on the title. I'm going to name it triangle. Maybe that will magically make it change. Triangle. Nope, it didn't magically change to a triangle, so I must have to do something more. Let's dig into the controls of this layer. Contents is already open. It says Polystar 1. I'm going to open that. Here we go. If you open Polystar Path 1, then you will finally get to a point where it gives you points as an option, and it is set to 5, which gives us a 5-shaped, 5-pointed thing. If I change it to 3, I got a triangle now. Yay, team. Life is good. I can rotate it if I don't like the position it's in. Maybe I'll set it to 0, and look at that. It put it pretty close to the right position. Should also be able, if I hold down shift and grab one of the corners, to scale it a bit if my scaling was off by a whole lot. And I'm going to put it down pretty close to the center. So I end up with something essentially like this. So what do we have to do now? Well, what we have to do is we have to convert these shapes from being just shapes to having a drawn path to them, as if we drew them with our pen tool. We're going to click on the name of the shape, path 1. So let's start with the triangle. So as we were opening these things up, we had to keep digging until we got Polystar Path 1. So it will put the name of your original shape, so like ellipse or whatever, Path 1. That's the layer we want to click on, okay? So it'll be different each layer, but in this case, we started with a Polystar, so it thinks it's called Polystar Path 1. We're going to right click on that, and we are going to convert that layer to a Bezier path. Convert to Bezier path. And we're going to do that to each layer. So let's go on down to our circle. We're going to notice it is an ellipse. That's what we originally used. We're going to go to that ellipse path 1, whatever it was originally called, with path 1 at the end. We're going to right click on it, convert it to Bezier path. Yay. And then we're going to go to our square and we're going to do the same thing. It was actually drawn with the rectangle tool. So I'm going to open the rectangle 1. I'm going to go to the rectangle path 1, right click, convert to Bezier path. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pull my timeline up a little bit so it's easier for you to see. what I am doing in the corner down here. But basically what we just said was stop thinking of each of these shapes as a complete object and see them as a bunch of connected dots that originally were used to draw that shape. Okay? And what's cool about that is that we then can use the path category that we just turned on. I know we had a path related thing before, but now we have, each one has a control that's just labeled path 1. That's the one we care about. So make sure you're at the beginning of your animation, the beginning of your comp. Go down, open path 1 to reveal the actual path control where the stopwatch is, and hit the stopwatch on each of these. So we're setting a keyframe at the beginning of the timeline for each of these layers. So triangle, open the path, put a stopwatch. Circle, open path 1, there's the path, hit a stopwatch. Square, path 1, hit the stopwatch. All right, so now we have a single keyframe on every path. I'm sorry, on every layer, which is in our comp a different shape. Now, why did we do that? We did that because one of the things you didn't realize you could do is you can copy and paste keyframes from one layer to another in After Effects, something that we tried to do in Premiere and it didn't work. But they do, as my understanding is, they do still have to be like controls. Meaning, if we steal a keyframe from path on one, it has to be applied to the path on the place we're taking it. We can't apply it to like scale. It's not going to translate. Okay, so we're going to go back up to our triangle layer to the path control that we had. What I actually need you to do is click on the entire path over here, which only has one keyframe. So you would think it would do the same thing, but it doesn't. So on your triangle layer, copy path, go down to the bottom layer, position where you want that keyframe to land, and then do paste. All right. But what you're going to end up with, I'm going to turn my circle off so you can see what it's doing. What you end up with is the fill keyframe at the beginning is set to square. The next keyframe is set to triangle. So we're going to steal the circle setting next. So I'm going to turn circle back on so I can see it. I'm going to go to the beginning because I want to copy from the beginning of my circle layer. So I'm clicking on path. I'm doing copy. I'm going down to the path of my square, which is no longer just a square. I'm going to go 2 seconds in so it's got some room, and I'm going to paste it there. And now you will see that it goes square, triangle, circle. But I have another circle up. Can I turn it off? Is it going to let me? But that is the goal, right? We want it to go shape, shape, shape. Now, I don't know why it insists on moving around the screen. It is more than a little annoying. So if you wanted to, you could duplicate these keyframes and spread it out so it spent like more time being a square and then kicked into animating into something else, and then a couple of, duplicate this keyframe so that the triangle is still a triangle for a little longer, and then eventually it would turn into the circle. But right now we just have it immediately going boom, boom, boom. All right, now I said I would add the star to mine so that you can see me go through the process again. So I'm going to collapse down my triangle and circle, leave the square open because we know that's where we're going to go with our keyframes. And I'm going to add star to mine. So if you got behind, this is your chance to see me do it again. All right, so I'm going to go up. I'm going to go to the star tool. I'm going to make a layer manually. Thank you. That totally worked. Yes. All right, so I'm going to add the star. So I'm going to do the same thing. I drew the star. Option Command on my Mac. Double click on the center to get it pretty close. Go to align. Now see, we aligned these things. I don't know why things move around, but I'm going to show you how to fix it. All right, so here's my star. Life is good, except I haven't converted it yet. So I'm going to name it. And then I'm going to right click on the Polystar 1. I'm going to open it. Sorry, I'm going to go to the path. That's the only place it will give you the convert to path controls. So Polystar 1 is not deep enough in, it won't give it to you. But the path control you do have right now. If you right click in, it will give you convert. Now I have a path control. I'm going to go to the beginning of my timeline, make sure I'm in the right spot, hit a path keyframe. Then I'm going to click on the path, hold in, copy, go down to after it has become its last shape that I had. Go to the path controls down here for the square and paste it in. Now when it plays, it should go from the last keyframe we had before, which was a circle, and turns into a star. Yay, it worked. Now let's say we want it to go back to be a square and then loop. It would be pretty easy to do that because I can go to the first keyframe, copy it, go to the end, 4 seconds, paste it. And now it'll go back to being a square, and I can set my little loop here to be on that. And then when I play it, it will dance through these, and I should be able, unless it fights me again, yep, I can turn off that star layer that I made, and now I can see it moving around. Annoyingly moving around. So how do we fix that? Well, we're talking basic position controls now. The square's in a good place. Square's in a good place at the end. So really it's these other keyframes that are making me angry. So if I go to the transform rectangle controls, I should have the ability to move this on the X and Y axis. So I can go back and get it pretty close to centered. Except, notice I forgot to do something. I just moved the position, but I didn't set it as a keyframe. So it moved my entire animation to the right. Not what I wanted. Do what I want, not what I say. So what I need to do is say, hey, at the beginning, yes, this position is good. My first keyframe is going to be right there. My second keyframe is going to be right here. So I'm going to manually set it and I'm going to fix it. Now it stays pretty close to the same position. Go to the next keyframe, it's jacked up as well. So I'm going to set a keyframe manually. Boom, position correct. Get it where I want it. Go to the next keyframe, do the same dang thing. Manual position control, try to fix it. And then of course my square is sort of jacked up. But I can steal that position keyframe from my first one, which is important, right? So I'm going to steal that keyframe, go down. So I copied the keyframe at the front and I'm pasting it on at the end so that my square is in exactly the same position so that it can loop. Now when I play it, and I know you're seeing terrible frame rate, but it's mostly staying in the same position. I could finesse it until it was just right. But even when it hits the last square, it seamlessly loops back and life is good.